Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're trying to cut through some of the noise around, institutional growth. We want to get right to the heart of what really matters, spiritual formation. Because for a lot of leaders, the challenge is pretty clear, isn't it? How do you measure genuine spiritual health, real progress in a community without just falling back on the easy metrics?
You mean like attendance, budget size, number of programs running, stuff like that?
Exactly, those shallow metrics. It feels like many leaders are great at expanding structures, but maybe not always nurturing souls.
That really is the core dilemma in leadership, I think.
Hmm.
We can, successfully expand the building, maybe increase the offerings, fill up the calendar.
Keep everyone dizzy.
Right, keep everyone busy.
Yeah.
But we might not actually be nurturing a single soul toward deeper reliance on Christ. It feels like we often lack the vocabulary, maybe the structure, to even talk about that intangible, unseen work of the Spirit.
Yeah, we need a way to make the invisible visible somehow. And that's why we're doing this deep dive today into a specific framework designed to tackle this exact problem, the Connect and Pray Scale framework.
Okay.
Now, this isn't just another survey or checklist. It's presented as a pretty profound tool built on biblical foundations. The whole idea is it helps track progress without sacrificing authenticity.
Right. It offers a kind of shared language, maybe a diagnostic tool, like a compass, you could say.
A compass, I like that. Helping you see not just activity, but actual spiritual advancement. So our mission here is to unpack this tool, focusing on how it makes that intangible spiritual progress visible, measurable, and importantly, actionable for you listening. We'll dig into its 3 essential growth tracks: presence, proclamation, and maturity.
Those 3 pillars, yeah, they interlock.
But first, let's anchor ourselves in the theological core. Connect and pray.
Okay. So when we look at those traditional metrics we mentioned, attendance, volunteer hours, giving, they are important operationally.
Sure, you need to know those things.
Of course. But they're really symptoms, not the diagnosis. They tell you how many showed up. But they tend to miss 4 critical dimensions that define a truly healthy community.
Okay, what are those 4 dimensions that get missed?
Well, the sources argue they fail to reveal the actual depth of discipleship. Also, the level of spiritual reliance, like, are people turning to prayer first or just defaulting to, cultural solutions?
Oh, okay. Reliance.
And then relational integration. How deeply are people actually connected? And finally, their missional posture. Are they looking outward?
So you could have a big budget, but 0 real spiritual depth, because the metrics are just measuring volume.
Exactly. Volume, not intent or transformation. So this framework tries to reposition the whole measurement system around 2 simple verbs. They call them the twin engines of discipleship.
And the first one is connect.
Connect, yeah. And it's rooted really deeply in the New Testament. You think of John 15, Jesus saying, "Abide in me." This abiding, it's vertical, our dependence on Christ, but it's also horizontal, our dependence on the community he creates.
And the sources define this connection, interestingly, not just as social convenience, but as covenant formation. What does that actually mean practically for someone listening?
Covenant formation.
Yeah.
It means the relationships are spiritually obligated. They're intentional. It's a difference between just a loose social club and, say, the early church in Acts. Remember, they were devoted to teaching, fellowship, breaking bread, and prayer. They were woven together really tightly.
So the gospel moved through them as a unit.
Yes, like a unified organism in the world. Connection creates the container, the space for faith to actually live and breathe.
Okay, that's connect. And the second engine is pray, described as the engine of divine activity.
Exactly. Prayer is framed here as where human will starts to align with God's purposes. It moves beyond just a personal devotional exercise.
Like ticking a box.
Not just ticking a box. It becomes a strategic necessity for mission. Look at Acts chapter 4. The believers, they didn't just complain after facing threats. They prayed specifically for boldness.
Okay.
So these 2 verbs, connect and pray, they create this powerful feedback loop. Connected communities, they naturally tend to cultivate a habit of faithful, expectant prayer.
And the prayer deepens the connection.
Exactly. Deepens the relational connection by centering their identity on God, not just their activity schedule or their programs.
Okay, so we have the engines connect and pray. Now let's look at those 3 growth tracks that act as the scale itself. The sources use this really helpful analogy here: soil, seed, and fruit.
Yeah, that analogy helps picture it, doesn't it? It's important to remember they're not like sequential steps, one after the other.
Right, they're interlocking living dimensions. Okay, let's start with the foundation, presence. That's the soil, the center. What does that mean?
Presence, measures the rhythms, both personal and communal devotion. This is really the inner life. How consistently are believers engaging with God? Through scripture, worship, personal prayer?
Embodied discipleship, is that the term?
Yes, embodied discipleship. Are they consistently showing up and actually practicing these spiritual disciplines?
And why is this the soil? Why start there?
Because without consistent presence, everything else gets unstable. If the soil is dry, the seed just won't take root.
Makes sense.
Without that established, sincere inner life, well, proclamation can become just hollow words, rhetoric, and maturity. That can be reduced to just spiritual performance.
Looking good on the outside.
Exactly. Looking good, but without real transformation happening inside.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So from the soil, we move outward to proclamation, which the analogy calls the seed.
Right. Proclamation reflects the outward life of faith. It's about the courage to share the gospel, yes, but also to serve others, to live missionally in whatever context you're in, marketplace, neighborhood, wherever.
It carries the seed to new soil.
That's the idea.
Now, the sources mention something called incarnational action. That sounds a little bit like jargon. How does that differ, practically, from just doing good deeds?
Yeah, that's a really crucial distinction. Incarnational action is about deeds that are deeply rooted in relational testimony. It's not just, say, writing a check or fulfilling some civic duty.
Right.
It's living among people, understanding their actual needs, and responding in ways that are sacrificial, ways that truly reflect the gospel message. This often involves speaking up, sure, but it always involves costly action. It's the visible love that makes the spoken word believable.
Got it. Visible love, validating the word. And finally, we arrive at maturity, which is the fruit, the visible growth over time.
Maturity captures that inner transformation becoming visible. You see growing character, resilience when people face struggles, alignment with Christ's heart, and this is critical leadership reproduction.
Not just consuming content.
Exactly. Is the community actually reproducing disciples and leaders? Or just filling slots in program?
And you made the point earlier that maturity isn't just private piety. What's the implication of that?
The implication is that real spiritual maturity inevitably leaks out into the world. It becomes public fruit.
How so?
Well, when we talk about influencing vocation, justice, civic engagement, we mean, is their faith actually changing how they handle negotiations at work, how they treat clients, how they manage staff on a Monday morning?
Or how they participate in their local community.
Yeah, precisely. If maturity just stays inside the church walls, it hasn't fully ripened yet.
Okay, this structure gives us the what? Presence, proclamation, maturity. Now we need to talk about the how. How do we measure this stuff without becoming, spiritual micromanagers?
Yeah, that's key.
This is where the 5-level scale comes in, acting as that compass you mentioned.
Right. The scale is designed as a diagnostic tool. It runs from level 1, which is basically disconnected or sporadic prayer, all the way up to level 5. Kingdom-saturated intercessory movement. It describes observable behaviors, both for individuals and for the whole congregation. And it's really meant to clarify, not to condemn or judge.
Let's maybe focus on the difference between level 2 and level 5, because level 2, labeled program-oriented, sounds like where a lot of really well-functioning communities might naturally land.
That's very common, yes.
So what are the indicators that separate that kind of high activity from deep transformation?
Well, at level 2, you see a lot of successful programs. You see functional volunteer teams. The calendar's packed. People feel busy. They feel useful. Sounds pretty good. It does on the surface. But the prayer life often lacks that strategic, expectant practice. It tends to be reactive, praying mostly around immediate needs or emergencies.
Right.
And crucially, small groups often revolve around just disseminating information, content consumption, rather than deep life sharing and focused, intentional intercession together.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, the real danger of being stuck at level 2 is the illusion of growth. The numbers might look good, the structure feels solid, but the actual spiritual dependence, the reliance on God, is maybe shallow.
That's exactly the risk.
How do you convince a leader who's running things successfully at level 2 to, risk disrupting that stable model to chase something that sounds maybe a bit nebulous, like level 5?
That's the central challenge, isn't it? The implication of staying at level 2 is that while you might grow numerically, the growth is rarely truly transformational. Why? Because the engines connect and pray aren't actually driving the core decisions.
Hmm.
The motivation to shift often comes when leaders start realizing they're exhausting their volunteers and themselves, frankly, through sheer management effort.
Instead of releasing God's power.
Exactly. Instead of releasing the power of the Spirit through active dependence and prayer.
Okay, so let's jump to the other end. The ideal. Level 5. Kingdom saturated. What does a community actually look like when intercession becomes their central identity?
The signs are pretty unmistakable, according to the sources. Intercession moves from just being, an item on the meeting agenda
Right.
to being a central identity marker for the whole community. You see thriving, multi-layered prayer networks specifically focused on local mission.
Wow.
And the connection pathways, they don't just retain members. They consistently produce multiplied leaders and new disciples. People are actually being equipped to lead and reproduce spiritual fruit elsewhere.
And how is their maturity expressed differently at this level?
Their maturity shows up as this prophetic love for their context. They're deeply engaged in justice and mercy, not as like separate programs outsourced to a committee.
But as a natural outflow.
Yes, a spontaneous outflow of their relationship with God and with each other.
Yeah.
The entire congregation starts to become this catalytic agent of the kingdom, deeply rooted in prayer, actively serving their community, and constantly seeing and expecting to see visible transformation.
Now, to measure all this, we have to avoid the framework itself becoming just another idol, another metric to manage. The sources seem really strong on using a mixed methods approach, capturing both data and stories.
Absolutely essential. You have to pair the quantitative with the qualitative to get the full picture. It prevents the numbers from becoming sterile.
Okay, let's get concrete then. What about the quantitative side? What are some specific tools or indicators?
On the quantitative side, the focus should be on leading indicators. These are behaviors that reliably predict future spiritual fruit, rather than just lagging indicators like attendance.
Okay, give it some examples. What can a leader actually track?
Well, think about tracking the percentage of adults who are engaged in a consistent, life-sharing small group, not just showing up to a large service.
Right, deeper connection.
Or track the frequency and participation rate of corporate prayer gatherings, especially those explicitly tied to mission outcomes. And here's a powerful one. Track the percentage of major leadership decisions that were explicitly taken with the documented prayer process.
Okay, documented prayer process. That's a great phrase. What does that actually look like in practice for a busy leadership team?
It means that before a significant decision gets made, could be about staffing, budget, launching something new, there's a formal, recorded time dedicated specifically to focused listening, to intercession, to seeking spiritual consensus.
Not just managerial consensus.
Right. It's different. The meeting minutes, for example, shouldn't just reflect the analysis of the balance sheet. They should also reflect the spiritual input, the discernment, the rationale that came through prayer. It basically forces spiritual dependence into the boardroom.
That makes the intentionality really visible, doesn't it?
Okay.
Now for the qualitative side, capturing the heart, the stories.
Yeah, the qualitative is critical for giving context to those numbers. We need to use story collection, getting short, maybe recorded, testimonies that show actual change in character and relationships, maybe in missional courage.
Okay, stories. What else?
We also need to use relational audits.
Relational audits. What's that?
It's basically asking some foundational questions that get at the real depth of connection and discipleship. Questions like, does every member have someone they could actually call if they were in a deep crisis?
That's a challenging question.
It is. And the flip side, do they have someone they are actively meeting with, discipling, or mentoring? This reveals whether true covenant formation is happening.
Got it.
And finally, things like prayer maps can be useful. Visualizing who is praying for whom or what specific contexts like streets, schools, local ministries are being covered by focused intercession.
Okay, to bring this all together, the sources share this little vignette, this story, about a small coastal church called Harbor Light. Apparently, they were kind of stuck at level 2. Good programs, but spiritually stagnant.
Yes, that's a great example.
Yeah.
Their breakthrough came when they started applying this connect and pray lens. They didn't just scrap their programs, it's important,
Okay.
but they re-engineered their connection points.
Right.
They launched something called harbor circles, which were basically intentional relational small groups. But here's the key structural change. Each circle was required to dedicate the last 15 minutes of their meeting to specific, focused intercession for one particular named street or block in their town.
Wow. That small shift from just general prayer Needs to really focused, intentional prayer tied to relational mission. That must have changed the dynamic.
It completely shifted their energy, moving it from just managing programs to engaging in mission together. And the results were visible. Not just higher group participation, though that happened.
What else?
They saw a steady pipeline of organic volunteers stepping up. And two brand new missional initiatives emerged directly from those prayer times. One focused on food justice, another on youth mentoring. People started seeing needs as they prayed for specific streets.
So the framework didn't create the growth?
No. It provided the structure that revealed and maybe accelerated the work God was already wanting to do.
That's really compelling. Okay, so for the listener who's hearing this and thinking, right, I want to move from just analyzing this to actually doing something, let's walk through the 90-day starter pathway that the sources outline.
Yeah, it's designed to be pretty practical.
We need to talk about the faithful rhythms involved, not just listing steps.
Definitely. The 90-day plan is set up to be relatively low risk, but potentially high impact, focusing on establishing new habits, new rhythms.
Okay, phase 1. Groundwork. What happens here?
This is really the visionary stage. You've got to cast the vision, grounding it deeply in scriptures like John 15 and Acts 1:2, really emphasizing that dependence on God.
Okay.
Then run a quick baseline assessment, maybe a simple survey, a few interviews, just to get your initial snapshot of where you might be on that 5-level scale.
Find your starting point.
Exactly. But the crucial action item here, right away, is to launch both a corporate and a personal prayer focus, maybe a 21-day period of focused intercession. This sets the expectation immediately. Prayer is the starting point, not the emergency brake we pull later.
What's the biggest hurdle or friction point lately to come up in that groundwork phase?
I think the real difficulty is getting people to shift their focus in prayer. Moving from just praying for the program, Lord, make our event successful, to praying about the mission itself, asking, Lord, how do you want us to express prophetic love for our neighbors right here?
That's a big shift. Okay, moving into phase 2, pathways.
Right. Now we get more operational. We focus on connection and training. You have to create intentional pathways so that newcomers can move pretty quickly, say within 30 days, into some kind of first step, small group. That's where that covenant formation starts to happen.
Makes sense.
And at the same time, you need to identify, train, and actually release prayer leaders. Don't just appoint them, empower them. Maybe launch a monthly extended prayer night. But make sure that time is tied directly to the mission, to the local and global needs you're actually tracking and praying about.
Got it. And finally, closing the loop with phase 3, integrate and evaluate.
Yeah, this becomes the repeating cycle. First, review the major decisions your leadership made in the last 90 days.
Yeah.
Ask honestly.
Yeah.
Did we actually use that documented prayer process?
Accountability.
Yes. Then, run the 5-level scale assessment again. Collect the new metrics, those leading indicators we talked about, and critically, collect the new testimonies, the new stories.
See what's changed.
Right. And then adjust your objectives for the next quarter based on what you sense the Spirit is showing you through both the data and the stories. It has to be this iterative, humble process of listening and responding.
Now, as powerful as this tool sounds, the critique of any framework like this is always that it can be misused or even manipulated. We have to talk about the crucial pitfalls to avoid.
Oh, absolutely. The leader's posture here is key.
Yeah.
You have to approach this like a gardener, not like a manufacturer trying to hit quotas.
Okay, first pitfall.
The first big one is reducing prayer to just a technique, making it a formula. The solution: ongoing theological teaching that emphasizes genuine dependence on God, not just mastering some kind of ritual or method.
Okay, what's the second pitfall?
Metrics becoming idols. This is huge. If you start managing the numbers just for external validation, or maybe for internal competition between groups, you've completely lost the plot.
So how do you avoid that?
You have to interpret the data spiritually. Constantly asking, okay, what is God doing here that this data might be revealing? Rather than, how can we manipulate behavior to hit this target?
Right. And the third pitfall, which sounds like it directly undermines that maturity track, connection without discipleship.
Yes, we see this often, don't we? Ministries that feel very social, lots of high energy. People are connected relationally, which is good, but they aren't actually being formed spiritually. There's no intentional growth happening.
So what's the solution there?
You have to ensure that every connection pathway, every group, every relationship has a clear discipleship step built into it. That could be a commitment to a new spiritual practice, maybe a focus on repentance and transformation, or equipping people to then lead others. Connection must lead somewhere deeper.
This really brings it all together. The ultimate synthesis here feels quite profound. The Connect and Pray scale isn't just about measurement, is it? It's about providing the language, the structure, to shift a community's whole core identity.
From being program
For
driven.
being spirit dependent. And it helps ensure that no believer's growth, however slow or unseen it might feel, gets left stagnant or overlooked.
Yeah, this framework really offers a new lens, a way to bring maybe intentionality and some spiritual clarity to the often chaos of ministry demands. The ultimate goal isn't managerial mastery, it's spiritual clarity and good stewardship.
Hmm.
I think the deepest question this framework allows us or pushes us to ask is this: what if your ministry could genuinely see what God sees? See the real state of hearts, the actual habits of reliance in your community.
That's a powerful question.
Because true leadership, in the end, is maybe more horticultural, like we said. Observing the soil, praying for the seed, tending the growth patiently, and ultimately trusting God to provide the increase.
So if you want to move beyond just tracking activity and really start to gauge the depth of discipleship, the Connect and Pray scale seems to offer a valuable map. Thanks for going on the deep dive with us today.